Poor single mom boarded the wrong flight. Didn't know the man sitting beside her was the lonely CEO. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The terminal buzzed with the sound of rolling suitcases and boarding announcements. At gate 35, a young mother named Maya Brooks clutched her worn leather tote, one hand gripping a small sketchbook that belonged to her 6-year-old son. Her heart raced as the overhead voice echoed, "Final boarding call." Rain streaked across the wide airport windows, and her reflection in the glass showed a woman who had barely slept, her hair tied back, her eyes tired but determined. It had been a long week of canceled interviews and bills piling up on the kitchen table. This trip was her last shot at rebuilding her life. "Excuse me, is this the flight to Denver?" she asked a passing flight attendant. The woman nodded quickly, already moving toward the gate. Maya hurried after her, unaware that the board behind her had just changed Flight 817 to Chicago. She stepped through the tunnel with a sigh of relief, whispering to herself, "Please, let this be a good day." Inside the plane, the cabin lights glowed soft gold. Business travelers murmured into their phones while rain tapped gently against the windows. Maya found her seat, 33A, and slipped in, bumping the armrest of the man beside her. "I am so sorry," she said, flustered. The man looked up from his tablet, his expression calm but distant. He wore a charcoal gray suit, his tie loosened, the kind of face that carried both exhaustion and quiet strength. "It is all right," he said simply, his voice low and even. Maya smiled nervously. "Long day?" she asked. He hesitated, then gave a small nod. "You could say that." For a moment, their eyes met hers uncertain, his guarded, as if conversation had become something foreign. The plane began to taxi, and Maya pressed her palms together, whispering a small prayer. Flying still frightened her. Her husband had died in a car accident 3 years earlier, and ever since then, the sound of engines made her chest tighten. She glanced at the man beside her. He noticed. "First time flying?" he asked. She shook her head quickly. "No, just not good memories." He paused, then said softly, "Try looking out the window when we take off. It helps." "Oh!" The engines roared, the ground fell away, and the lights of the city blurred beneath them. Maya did as he said, breathing slowly. When she looked back, he was watching the clouds with a distant expression, like someone remembering something he could never return to. Between them, her son's sketchbook slipped from the tote and fell open on the floor. He picked it up carefully. A crayon drawing filled the page, 2 stick figures holding hands under a blue sky. At the top, in a child's uneven letters, it read, "Mom's New Life." He handed it back gently. "Your son?" She nodded. "Yes, Noah. He is with my sister for a few days, while I go for a job interview." She smiled faintly. "If I get it, we can finally move out of my sister's living room." He studied her for a long second, then smiled a small, rare smile. "That is a good dream," he said. The seatbelt sign turned off, and Maya relaxed a little. She thought she was headed toward a new beginning. She had no idea she was on the wrong flight, and even less idea that the man sitting beside her, the quiet stranger in the gray suit, was Ethan Cole, the reclusive chief executive officer of Cole Air, the very airline she had just boarded by mistake. When Maya stepped out of the terminal that night, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets of the small city slick and shining under the streetlights. The air smelled of gasoline and wet concrete. She pulled her coat tighter and tried to steady her breath. Her phone screen glowed in the dark. The message from her sister read, "Noah is asleep. Good luck tomorrow." For a moment, that small message felt like a hand reaching across the miles to hold hers. Her motel was nothing special. A flickering sign read, "Sunrise Inn," though the sun was long gone. Inside, the carpet was worn, and the heater rattled when she turned it on. Maya sat on the edge of the bed, pulled her son's sketchbook from her tote, and flipped to the last page. A half-drawn picture of a small house stood beneath a bright crayon sundae. She whispered, "We will get there, Noah. Somehow." Morning came gray and cold. The mirror above the sink showed a woman trying to look confident, wearing a pressed blouse she had bought from a thrift store. She brushed her hair twice, smiled once, and whispered, "You can do this." Her interview was in an office building downtown. She had applied for an administrative assistant position at a travel company. It paid barely enough, but enough was all she needed. Traffic was heavy, and by the time she reached the reception desk, she was already 10 minutes late. The receptionist offered a polite but distant smile. "I am sorry, the hiring manager has another meeting now. You may wait if you like." Maya sat down, her hands folded tightly on her lap, watching the clock tick. 20 minutes later, a voice called her name. The interview lasted 15 minutes. The manager was kind but distracted, and when it ended, she already knew the answer. Outside, the wind bit through her thin coat. She walked to a small diner nearby, counting the bills in her wallet. Enough for one sandwich and a cup of coffee. The waitress, an older woman with kind eyes, noticed her hesitation and said softly, "Sit anywhere, sweetheart. Refill is free." Maya smiled in thanks and slid into a booth. She ate slowly, watching the rain return, tapping gently against the window. At the counter, a small television played the local news. The headline read, "Coal Air expands new route to Denver." She froze. That was the flight she had meant to take. Her heart dropped as she realized her mistake. She had boarded the wrong plane, spoken to a stranger for 2 hours, and landed in the wrong city. Her interview had been here by coincidence, but the embarrassment burned through her anyway. Back at the motel, she collapsed onto the bed, exhausted. Every plan she had made felt like it was slipping away. Her phone buzzed again. A message from her sister. "Noah drew you a new picture. He says it is called Mom's Adventure. He believes in you." Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. She whispered into the dim light, "I have to keep going. I promised him." Oh! That night, she took out a notebook and started to list every option she could think of. Temporary jobs, part-time shifts, anything to pay next month's rent. The heater groaned again, louder this time, and she laughed through her tears. Even in the worst moments, the world kept moving. She decided that she would too. Across town, high above the same city, Ethan Cole stood by the window of his hotel suite. The skyline glittered below, but his eyes were distant. The sound of planes taking off drifted faintly through the glass. He could not stop thinking about the woman on the flight, the one who had sat beside him by mistake, talking about second chances as if they were still possible. He wondered if she had made it home safely. He wondered why he cared. Maya lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her hand resting on the sketchbook beside her. The clock read 11:45. Tomorrow would be another long day. Still, she whispered the same words she always told her son before bed. "Be brave, be kind, keep going." And somewhere between exhaustion and hope she closed her eyes, unaware that fate had only just begun to weave their lives together. The next morning, sunlight crept through the thin motel curtains and landed on the sketchbook lying open beside Maya. She blinked against the light, her body still heavy from restless sleep. For a long moment, she stared at the drawing of a house with a garden and a stick figure holding a balloon. Her son had drawn it before she left. Beneath it, in his uneven handwriting, were 3 words, "Mom's New Life." She traced the letters with her fingertip. The sketchbook had become her compass, a small reminder that dreams still mattered, even when everything else felt uncertain. It was the only thing she had not lost, the one object that connected her to hope. She showered quickly, packed her tote, and walked to the bus stop. The streets smelled faintly of rain and coffee. The day before, she had promised herself to find any kind of work, no matter how small. There was a help wanted sign taped to the window of a small cafe near the corner. The place looked cozy, with chalkboard menus and a vase of wildflowers on each table. Inside, a woman in her 50s looked up from behind the counter. "Can I help you, dear?" "Yes," Maya said, her voice careful but steady. "I saw your sign. I am looking for work." The woman studied her for a moment, then smiled. "We need someone for the morning shift. Can you start tomorrow?" Maya nodded, barely hiding the relief that flooded through her chest. "Yes, absolutely. Thank you." That afternoon, she called her sister from the bus. "Tell Noah that Mommy got a job," she said softly. She could almost hear her son cheering in the background, his voice muffled but full of joy. For the first time in months, she smiled without forcing it. The following morning, she arrived at the cafe before sunrise. The smell of fresh pastries filled the air, and soft music played from a small radio near the window. She wiped tables, brewed coffee, and learned the rhythm of the place. The work was tiring, but it felt honest, something she could be proud of. Each time she took a short break, she opened her son's sketchbook and added a few notes or small doodles beside his drawings. By the end of the week, she had earned her first paycheck. It was not much, but it covered food and a few bills. She folded the envelope carefully, whispering, "One step at a time." Meanwhile, across the city, Ethan Cole sat in his office high above the skyline. His assistant placed a stack of documents on his desk. "The new route to Denver has been delayed again," she said. He nodded absently. His thoughts drifted elsewhere to a woman on a plane who had talked about her son and her dreams. He did not even know her name, yet she had stayed in his mind like a melody he could not forget. Later that evening, as he left a meeting, he passed a small cafe, the same one where Maya now worked. Through the window, he saw her wiping a table, her hair pulled back, her expression tired but calm. Something in him paused. Recognition flickered like a spark in the dark. He stood outside for a moment, watching the warmth inside, the soft glow of light against her face. Then a customer spoke to her, and she laughed. It was a sound he remembered. He turned away before she could notice him, but the memory followed him all the way back to his car. That night, Maya returned to her room with aching feet but a full heart. She placed the sketchbook on the nightstand, opened to the page titled Mom's New Life, and whispered, "We are getting closer, Noah." The heater hummed softly, and for once, she did not feel alone. She did not know that the man she had met by mistake, the quiet stranger who had handed her son's drawing back to her, had already found her again. Nor did she know that their small connection, born from an accident, was about to change the course of her life forever. Outside, rain began to fall once more, tapping lightly against the window, as if the world itself was keeping time with her heartbeat. Days turned into weeks, and the small cafe became a rhythm Maya could trust. The smell of roasted beans, the laughter of regulars, the hum of the espresso machine, all of it began to feel like stability. Yet, some nights when she closed up, she would glance at the folded note inside her sketchbook and think about the man who had written it, Ethan Cole. The name carried both warmth and distance, like a melody she could not stop humming. One afternoon, as the sky outside darkened with winter rain, the cafe door opened again. Ethan stepped in, shaking off his umbrella. "You again?" Maya said before she could stop herself. He smiled. "I was in the neighborhood." She poured his usual black coffee and placed it in front of him. "You run an airline, Mr. Cole. You are never just in the neighborhood." He laughed quietly. "Fair enough. Then consider this a detour." Over the next few visits, their conversations deepened. He asked about her son, about her dreams, and listened without interrupting. She learned that he had lost his parents young, that he had built his company from almost nothing, and that success had cost him more than he cared to admit. In the quiet corner of that cafe, they began to share parts of themselves that the rest of the world never saw. Sometimes he stayed after closing, helping her stack chairs or mop the floor while they talked. It felt easy, real, in a way that life rarely was. Yet Maya reminded herself of the difference between their worlds. She was a waitress scraping by. He was a man surrounded by boardrooms and glass towers. Still, when their hands brushed over a coffee cup one night, she felt something shift. As he left, he said softly, "If you ever need anything, just call." She watched him disappear into the rain, her heart caught between caution and longing. For the first time in years, she felt something she could not name, a quiet hope, that maybe, just maybe, fate was not done with them yet. The rain came harder the next evening, drumming against the cafe windows like restless fingers. Maya was wiping down the counter when her manager hurried over, holding the phone. "It is for you," she said. "A man named Ethan Cole." Maya's heart jumped. She took the receiver slowly. "Hello? Maya, I'm sorry to call at work," Ethan said, his voice low but steady. "I am hosting a charity event this weekend. It supports single-parent travel programs, and I thought of you. Would you come? As my guest." She hesitated. "Ethan? That sounds far above my world." "It is not about worlds," he said softly. It is about stories that deserve to be heard. After a long pause, she agreed. On Saturday night, she stood outside the grand ballroom of the Cole Foundation building, feeling entirely out of place. Her simple navy dress had been borrowed from her sister, and she clutched her small purse like a lifeline. Inside, chandeliers sparkled, and music floated through the air. She took a deep breath and stepped in. Ethan was waiting near the stage. He looked different under the warm lights, relaxed, approachable, his eyes lighting up when he saw her. "You made it," he said. "You look wonderful." "Thank you," she said quietly, unsure where to put her hands. He introduced her to several guests, and though she stumbled through small talk, she noticed the kindness in his gestures. He made sure she never felt ignored or lost in the glittering crowd. For the first time in years, she felt seen. During the speeches, Ethan took the microphone. "We began this program to help single parents travel safely and reconnect with loved ones," he said. "Sometimes, one mistake, one wrong flight, can change everything." His gaze found hers in the crowd. "It can remind us that compassion still exists." Applause filled the room. Maya's chest tightened. She realized he was talking about her, about the day they met. It felt surreal, like her small story had somehow found its way into a world of glass and gold. Later, as the guests mingled, Ethan handed her a glass of sparkling cider. "You did well," he said with a smile. "You survived your first gala." She laughed softly, barely. Then her eyes drifted toward a group of sharply dressed men approaching. One of them, a tall man with silver hair, shook Ethan's hand firmly. "Cole," he said, his tone clipped. "We need to discuss the upcoming merger." Ethan's demeanor changed, his shoulders straightening, his expression cooling. The businessman version of him stepped forward, and in that instant, Maya saw the distance between them return like a wall. The group moved him aside, their conversation brisk and coated with corporate jargon she could not follow. She felt invisible again, standing among glittering strangers. She left quietly, slipping her coat over her shoulders. Outside, the city lights blurred through the rain. She walked down the marble steps alone, the echo of his speech still in her ears. Ethan noticed she was gone only after the crowd had thinned. He hurried outside, scanning the sidewalk. But she was already halfway down the block, her figure dissolving into the night. Back at her motel, Maya sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the sketchbook on the nightstand. For the first time, the drawing of Mom's new life looked unfinished. She whispered to herself, maybe people like him live in a different sky. In his car, Ethan sat in silence, watching the rain trail down the windshield. He had meant to bring her closer, but somehow, his world had pushed her away. Neither of them knew it yet, but that misunderstanding was only the beginning of what fate still had planned for both of them. The next morning, Maya arrived at the cafe earlier than usual. The air smelled of fresh rain and burnt toast. She tied her apron, forced a smile, and began wiping tables as if nothing had happened. But inside, her thoughts were a storm. She replayed the image of Ethan surrounded by people in suits, shaking hands, speaking in words that belonged to another world. By mid-morning, her coworker noticed her silence. "Rough night?" the woman asked. Maya nodded slightly. "Just a reminder," she said, "that some dreams are not meant for people like me." Hours passed, and she tried to bury herself in routine. Yet, when the bell over the door chimed, her heart jumped. Ethan stood there, rain on his coat, his eyes searching. "Maya," he said quietly, "can we talk?" The cafe was half empty, and her manager gestured for her to take a break. Maya led Ethan outside under the awning, the rain falling steady behind them. "I should have told you the truth from the start," he said. "I did not mean to hide who I was." She folded her arms, her voice firm but calm. "You let me talk about struggling to buy milk and second-hand shoes, while you own a company that flies across continents." "Oh, I never wanted you to feel small," he said. "You made me remember what real life feels like." She shook her head. "You do not understand. When someone like me meets someone like you, people assume it is about money. They look at me and think I must be chasing something. I cannot live like that." His face softened, but his eyes carried regret. "Then tell me how to make it right." "You cannot," she said. Because this is not a movie, Ethan. It is real life. Oh. For a moment neither of them spoke. The rain filled the silence, steady and cold. Finally, Maya stepped back. Please stop coming here. It is better for both of us. He wanted to argue, to tell her that she was wrong, but her tone left no room. He nodded once, his jaw tightening. If that is what you want, he said, then I will go. She watched him leave, his figure disappearing into the gray morning. When she turned back inside, her coworker handed her a fresh pot of coffee without a word. Maya poured cup after cup for strangers, her movements automatic, her heart heavy. That night, she could not sleep. The sound of rain against the window matched the rhythm of her thoughts. She opened her son's sketchbook and stared at the page titled, Mom's New Life. The drawing now seemed to mock her. She whispered, maybe I was foolish to believe in chance. Across the city, Ethan sat in his office, the lights of the skyline blurring through the glass. His assistant entered quietly, placing a folder on his desk. The press wants a statement about the charity program, she said. Some are calling it a publicity stunt. Ethan closed his eyes. The very thing he had built to help others was being twisted by those who only saw headlines. And now, because of his own silence, the one person who had inspired it thought he had deceived her. He dismissed his assistant and sat alone in the dark, the hum of the city beneath him. For the first time in years, the success surrounding him felt meaningless. Maya lay awake until dawn, watching the sky lighten from gray to pale gold. She whispered into the quiet room, be brave, be kind, keep going. But this time, the words trembled. For both of them, love had turned into distance, and truth had come too late. 2 weeks passed before Maya heard his name again. It came through the television in the corner of the cafe as she cleaned the counter after closing. The newscaster's voice was calm and precise. Cole Air Foundation will unveil a new program this Friday, dedicated to helping single parents travel for work and reunite with their children. The initiative is personally funded by CEO Ethan Cole. The words froze her in place. Her coworkers exchanged curious glances, but Maya said nothing. She turned off the television and locked up in silence. That night, she lay awake, the glow of the streetlight falling across her sketchbook. He had not forgotten. On Friday, the city buzzed with the event. Maya tried to ignore it, but her curiosity won. During her lunch break, she walked toward the community center, where the unveiling was being held. She stood at the edge of the crowd, half hidden behind a row of tall banners. Reporters' cameras flashed, and a small stage stood beneath a canopy of white lights. Ethan stepped to the microphone, his voice clear but steady. This foundation is not about wealth or power, he said. It is about giving families a chance to start over. The name of the program comes from a child's drawing titled, Mom's New Life. That drawing reminded me that courage does not belong only to those who succeed. It belongs to those who keep trying, no matter how many times they fall. Maya's eyes widened. She pressed a hand to her mouth. He was talking about her, about Noah's sketchbook, about the dream she had carried across cities and mistakes. Around her, people applauded. She stood motionless, tears slipping down her cheeks. Then something unexpected happened. Ethan looked toward the crowd and said, "The woman who inspired this program is here today. I did not tell her in advance because I wanted her to see that her story mattered, that she mattered." Maya's breath caught as he stepped down from the stage and began walking toward her. People turned, cameras flashing, but he ignored them. When he reached her, he stopped only a few feet away. The rain had started again, soft at first, then heavier. "You once said this is not a movie," he said quietly. "You were right. It is real life. And in real life, people make mistakes. I made one when I hid who I was, but I will not make the same mistake twice. You taught me that honesty is worth more than pride." Maya stared at him, trembling. The crowd around them blurred, the noise fading until it was just the two of them standing in the rain. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "Because you reminded me of what I had forgotten," he said. "That kindness changes people. That love is not about saving someone, but standing beside them." For a moment, she could not speak. Then, she said softly, "You did not have to build all this to say sorry." I did not build it for apology," he replied. "I built it because your story deserves to live on. Because Noah deserves to see what his drawing started. She looked at him, the rain soaking her hair and dress, and finally nodded. The applause returned, swelling around them as the lights glimmered through the water. In that moment, she realized that justice did not always mean revenge or distance. Sometimes, it meant letting truth be seen. Ethan had done that not with words alone, but with action. And for the first time, Maya let herself believe that maybe love, even after all the mistakes, was still possible. The weeks that followed felt like the first slow breath after a long storm. The new foundation program launched quietly but steadily. Families began applying for travel grants, and the news carried stories of single parents reunited with children they had not seen in months. Each time Maya saw a photograph of a smiling mother holding her child at an airport gate, her heart lifted a little higher. Ethan had kept his promise. He never used her story for attention again. Every statement he gave focused on community and kindness, not on his own name. He sent her an invitation to the Foundation's art exhibit 2 weeks later, attached to a small handwritten note. It read, "Noah's drawing deserves to be seen by the world. I hope you both will come." For days she hesitated. She had returned to her routine at the cafe, working morning shifts and saving every dollar she could. Yet something in her heart whispered that she needed to go not for him, but for herself. So on a bright Saturday morning, she and Noah boarded a bus together. Her son sat by the window, clutching the same sketchbook that had once fallen open on a stranger's lap. When they arrived at the gallery, the building glowed with warm light. A small crowd was already inside, gathered around the entrance hall. Maya's hands trembled as she stepped through the doors. The air smelled faintly of paint and fresh flowers. Then she saw it. Against a soft gray wall hung Noah's drawing, framed beneath a single spotlight. The bright blue sky, the 2 stick figures, the words, "Mom's New Life," all of it preserved exactly as it had been. But below the drawing was a small plaque that read, "Inspired by the courage of Maya and Noah Brooks." "Oh!" Noah's eyes widened. "Mom, that is mine," he shouted with delight. "They put it on the wall." Maya laughed through her tears. "Yes, baby, they did." Behind them, a familiar voice spoke. "It belongs there." She turned and saw Ethan standing a few steps away, wearing a simple gray suit. There was no crowd around him this time, no flashes of cameras, only a quiet warmth in his eyes. Noah looked up at him curiously. "Are you the man from the airplane?" Ethan smiled. "I am. And you must be the artist." Noah grinned proudly. "Mom says art makes people feel things. Did it make you feel something?" Ethan's smile softened. "Yes, it reminded me what matters most." The boy nodded, satisfied, then wandered toward the snack table, leaving the 2 adults alone. Maya took a slow breath. "You really did all this?" "Yes," he said simply. "Because you reminded me that success without purpose is just noise. I wanted to build something that mattered." "Oh, you could have done that without me." "Maybe," he said, "but I would not have known how." They stood together in silence, watching Noah examine the paintings nearby. The sounds of laughter and gentle music filled the space. For once, the world did not feel divided between rich and poor, between luck and loss. It felt human. After a while, Ethan turned to her. "There is something else I want to show you." He led her to a smaller room at the back of the gallery. On the wall hung a large photograph taken from the event day, the one where rain had fallen, and she had stood in the crowd. In the picture, Ethan was stepping down from the stage, his eyes locked on hers. Beneath it, a single line was engraved. "Sometimes the wrong flight takes you exactly where you are meant to go." Maya's breath caught. "That is what I told myself that day," she whispered. He nodded. And it was true. Oh, for the first time in months, she felt peace, not the fragile kind built on hope, but the quiet certainty that she had survived, grown, and mattered. Noah ran back to them, holding a cookie in one hand and a paper cup of juice in the other. "Mom," he said excitedly, "they said I can come here again to draw." Maya smiled, crouching down beside him. "You can draw anywhere you want, my love." Ethan watched them, his heart full. He had spent years building an empire, only to realize that the greatest thing he could create was connection. Later, as the crowd began to leave, he walked Maya and Noah to the door. The afternoon sunlight poured over the sidewalk, painting everything gold. "Maya," he said quietly, "I do not want to lose this again. Not the foundation, not the lesson, and not you. She looked at him, unsure how to respond. He continued, I am not asking you to leave your world for mine. I am asking if we can build a new one together, one where honesty is the only contract. For a long moment, she said nothing. The city moved around them, cars passing, people talking, the sound of life blending into a steady hum. Then she smiled softly. You always were stubborn, she said. But maybe that is what it takes to make something real. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was not a diamond ring, but a silver pendant, shaped like a paper airplane. For the flight that started it all, he said. She laughed through her tears. You really think of everything, do you not? I try, he said gently. But some miracles happen by mistake. She took the pendant and held it tightly, feeling the cool metal against her palm. Then maybe this is one mistake I do not want to fix. Noah tugged at her hand. Mom, are we going home? She looked down at him and smiled. Yes, sweetheart. But this time, we are not flying alone. Ethan stepped closer, his hand brushing hers, and for the first time, she did not pull away. Together, they walked down the steps, the afternoon light fading into evening. The world around them glowed, the city, the people, the sky above all, alive with the quiet hum of possibility. As they reached the corner, Ethan looked back once at the gallery where Noah's drawing hung, shining beneath the soft lights. Then he looked at Maya. Ready for takeoff? He asked. She laughed, the sound warm and steady. Always. And as they walked forward, side by side, the voiceover of her story could have said what both of them already knew. Sometimes the wrong flight, the wrong table, or the wrong moment is not a mistake at all. It is fate, dressed as coincidence, guiding two hearts toward exactly where they were meant to be. The camera of memory would linger on the sketchbook, the pendant, and the framed drawing that had started everything. A reminder that true love is not built on perfection, but on courage, kindness, and the will to keep going. That day, under the open sky, Maya Brooks found what she had been searching for all along, not wealth, not status, but home. And in her heart, she knew one simple truth. The wrong flight had carried her exactly where she was meant to land.